Gators Breakdown, Ep024 is live and on the air and for your podcasting pleasure. Florida loses a tough one, 31-13 in Tallahassee. And of course, the offensive questions reemerge in the direction of this offense, and we'll break all that down. We'll break into some ugly numbers for Florida, some of the coaching decisions from offensive coordinator Doug Nussmeier. Of course, he's going to be a hot name being talked about this week. I'll talk about the defensive effort coming up. Some injuries there, of course, going into the game and more in the game led to some changes. And we'll talk about what this loss means for Florida a little bit on the recruiting trail, and we'll dive deeper into that a little bit later. But I'll just hit on it this episode just a little bit. So, as I mentioned, Gators Breakdown. You can find us on iTunes, SoundCloud, TuneIn Radio, and live on YouTube. And YouTube live will be turned into a podcast for your pleasure. So whether you're listening live or on the podcast, thanks for listening as we talk about Florida loses its fourth straight to FSU, 31-13. And I mentioned the ugly numbers, and it's about touchdowns against FSU and the non-existence of them from the Florida offense. After failing to score a touchdown against Florida State Florida has now scored 2 offensive touchdowns in 50 drives over the last 4 seasons against Florida State. It's been 10 quarters since Florida has scored a touchdown against the FSU defense on the offensive side of the ball. Got a special teams one that gave Florida the 13th point in the game this past week, but 10 quarters, and this Florida offense has yet to find the end zone against FSU. And if you guys could look at it and go just deeper from the last 2 weeks, only 1 touchdown in the last 2 games from the offense, and that was a 98-yarder from Austin Appleby to Tyree Cleveland last week against LSU. So Florida, the offense, of course, it kind of got overshadowed last week with the big win over LSU, but we knew the problems were still there. You were hoping this offense could find something against Florida State, a defense that has struggled a little bit, has gotten better as the season has went on. Hasn't been struggling as much in the last month as they were at the beginning of the season against Clemson, Louisville, Ole Miss. Sorry, this Gators offense is not even close to those offenses. So, and then I tweeted out before the game, Florida needed to turn this into a game like NC State played FSU just a few weeks ago. They held Dalvin Cook in check, and they made DeAndre Francois beat them. Florida did that for the most part. The defense did their job. The defense did enough. They settled down after the first couple of drives. FSU helped them a little bit by not running Dalvin Cook all that much. I think they mentioned in the TV broadcast that he had injured his wrist, so I'm pretty sure they were trying to not kill him a little bit, but and then also save him from the fourth quarter, because that's where I think FSU thought they would really need him. And just wear down this Gator defense. But the numbers aren't pretty. Florida struggles against Florida State in that defense. What Florida State did, yes, they came with some new looks. Yes, they came with some exotic schemes, but they also just beat Florida man-to-man line of scrimmage. It was a mismatch from the get-go. DeMarcus Walker, I loved him coming out of high school from here in Jacksonville, and he showed every bit of the great player that he is. He dominated the Florida offensive line. No matter where he lined up, he would line up at end, he would line up at tackle, and he found his way into the backfield. So while this offensive line had looked like it had been gelling, had been getting better, and don't get me wrong, it is better, but they really struggled last night. And, from the first drive of the game, you thought Florida was going to do something. Nussmeier and McElwain come up with a great plan to tell some new formations, some new plays we haven't seen. They drove right down the field, getting to the goal line to go situation. And, the very first and goal, if Appleby keeps that keeper on the zone read, he's in the end zone for a touchdown. Maybe confidence gets turned around. Maybe that sparked something for Gators to do something. But it seems the scripted plays are there. Florida has looked pretty good at times this year on the first drive of games, but only to falter and not be able to do anything later in the game. and I guess I'll go ahead and go to the offensive coordinator Doug Nussmeier talk. I was going to talk about Appleby first, but I'll go ahead. I tweeted out after the game. To me, and this is my opinion, and if you disagree with it, I can see your point. Don't get me wrong. I don't think this is a majority coaching problem. I think it's more of a player personnel problem. There were plays there. The deep ball. I mean, Appleby, if he hits 2 of those, it's a completely different game. But he missed every deep throw, and the throws and the plays were there. Not the throws, but the plays were there. The receivers had steps on the FSU DBs. The one to Callaway that he almost caught. Could it have been a better throw? Yeah. Could it have been caught? Yeah. But that's 2 players there. Appleby just missing the throw and Callaway just not being able to make the catch. But to me, for the most part, the plays were there. You had to know FSU was going to key on Scarlett, and they did. But he still ran tough. That was my complaint. That was my biggest complaint from Nussmeier against in the FSU game was maybe he abandoned the run too early, and that's not the first time he's done that. And the red zone offense gets stagnant at times. But as I mentioned, if Appleby keeps it on the keeper on the first and goal, that's a touchdown. And then he goes to force some throws. If it was me, I line up Scarlett 3 times in a row and just take my chances. Of course, they went for it on 4th and goal, didn't get it. But I mean, you can believe me. You can, people can spout at me all they want. With Nussmeier being a problem, and I'll listen. I'll tend to agree with some of it. But I think, and if you're asking my opinion, it's more of a personnel problem. Florida doesn't have a quarterback. Hasn't had a quarterback. Doesn't have a quarterback since 2009. It's been 7 seasons. And the offensive line didn't do him any favors last night either. So, I mean, it's very hard to get creative on offense. It's very hard to do anything on offense when you're not getting blocking and you can't trust your quarterback to make a throw. And I know people want to sit here and claim, it's not creative, it's not going of course, like I mentioned, early in the game, all those plays are pre-planned. They look at a lot of film and they try and get a score early in the game based on what they've seen from tape. Then you have to adjust. And if that's another knock on Nussmeier you want to throw at me, I'll buy a little bit. But I still say the plays were there. The plays have been there to me all year. I've seen plays where wide receivers are running open and the quarterback doesn't see them, or the quarterback just doesn't have clearly enough time to throw. I know there are other plays you could throw in there. People say, "Well, with the rush, why didn't they go to the screen game?" They can't block in the screen game. It works a couple of times, and I'm a big screen game proponent of Jim McElwain's offense. I love what he did at Alabama in the running back screen game. But, I mean, the last few times Florida's tried to run it, they can't block it. And and also the opposing defensive line gets back there faster than they're even supposed to. So when those things happen, the coaching staff is very limited. Now, if you want to throw at me, that's their problem because of recruiting and the players they're bringing in, I can buy that as well. But I mean, you have to remember, Luke Del Rio was brought in to never be a starter at Florida. The Will Grier situation happened, suspended, transferred. That was going to be Mac's guy the whole time. We know what happened there. Treon Harris wasn't going to be quarterback this year. Luke Del Rio was the man up, and I don't think I think we probably bought too much into the talk of how good he was. Maybe McElwain really thought he was going to be that good. Once teams got tape on him, it's been ugly. Austin Appleby pretty much the same. There was a reason he was a backup at Purdue, but people want to blame the coaching staff for the play calling. If you want to blame it for bringing those guys in, more power to you. But McElwain wasn't going to be caught in the same situation that he was in playing Treon Harris. And don't get me wrong, the offense looks a lot the same. We wanted to put a lot of the blame on Treon Harris last year, but I think we can see now that it's not totally that. So, I can buy that it's not all player personnel is the problem, but I've seen plays there, and I think if Florida has the right quarterback, and look, we won't get our answer for this Florida offense this season. It's already too late in the season. They're fixing to play an Alabama team that's going to absolutely crush them. Maybe they get a favorable matchup in the bowl game, but Austin Appleby more than likely is going to be your starter for the next 2 games. So, of course, these are questions that's just going to keep arising till Florida finds a quarterback, till they find something on offense. And like as I mentioned, we're not going to get our answer this year. The only answer we're going to get is if any coaching staff changes happen. Of course, the three main names people are throwing out are Doug Nussmeier, Mike Summers, and Greg Nord to be let go. If you're asking me, I say keep Nussmeier, give him one more year with their quarterback that they've recruited. Keep Summers on staff somehow, but not as your main offensive line coach and not as a recruiter at all. And Greg Nord should just be completely let go of. I don't see what he brings to the table a lot from his position. But as I mentioned, I was talking about Austin Appleby there. I mean, terrible game by him. There were throws there. There were throws deep that he, for the most part this season has made and absolutely missed every one of them against FSU. You hit a couple of those, I'm telling you, it is a completely different game. But, it is what it is. Appleby was 19 of 35, 149 yards, only averaged 4.3 yards of completion. No touchdowns, of course, and no interceptions. I mean, I know 2 weeks in a row we've seen this type of play from Austin Appleby. As I mentioned before, there was a reason he was a backup at Purdue. We got kind of jaded a little bit once he put up some good numbers against South Carolina. That South Carolina defense isn't very good. We're playing good at the time, so that's kind of why we thought, okay, maybe there's something here. But I also thought that they helped him by using his legs a little bit. We haven't seen that at all the last 2 weeks. I think part of it is they're maybe trying to keep him healthy, trying to keep him in the game. Del Rio's not healthy, so he's not going to play. And then then you're up to your freshman. And McElwain really this late in the season does not want to play Felipe Franch, Kyle Trask, nor should he. Not this late in the season. So people calling for that, get real. It's not happening, nor should it happen. But the complete offense was shut down. Jordan Scarlett was, had some good runs early in the game. As I mentioned, I think my big complaint with Nussmeier was abandoning the run game too early. I thought there should be just keep it going. It may not be there every time, but keep punishing that Florida State defense. And once they passed a lot on first down and Florida got behind the chains, you knew they were going to run it on second down after an incomplete on first down. Then it just lined up, third and 7, third and 8, third and 6, third and long for this Florida offense, and they weren't going to convert it. Scarlett was 14 carries, 53 yards, averaged 3.8 yards a carry, and a long of 13. Callaway got a carry as well. Should have seen more than that. I think he should have, try to, a little more creativeness there. But we've seen these wide receivers move in motion a lot and trying to get a handoff against LSU. I don't think they handed it off to a receiver once. We saw it a good bit against FSU. With Callaway had one and Brandon Powell had one, but that was went for a 2-yard loss. I was surprised Jordan Cronkrite got as much playing time as he did. We didn't see him at all against South Carolina and LSU. And then he magically shows up and gets the same amount of carries as Michael Pirine. Maybe he had a good practice. A good practice week. I don't necessarily know what went into that. Practice was very quiet this week going into the FSU game. It was an ugly scene on offense. And Callaway with 6 catches for 58 yards, averaged 9.7, and had a long of 22. Pirine with 2 catches, 26 yards. Tyree Cleveland, only 2 catches, couldn't get him the ball. As I mentioned, this Appleby just couldn't hit consistently any throws down the field there. So, of course, you move to the other side of the ball. The defense did what it could. They're banged up. They still think they did their job. It was a job where it started off so bad again with Dalvin Cook. I think he ended the first quarter with 83 yards or something like that. But that was ugly, and a lot what fed into the FSU offense having success. We'll have to go back to the Florida offense just for a second again. What fed FSU having success? The Florida offense going 0 for 12 on third down. That's the stat of the game. Couldn't stay on the field. Couldn't keep drives going, giving FSU more chances to get something going. You know, Florida had 27, almost 28 minutes time of possession to FSU's 32. You convert some of those third downs. You know, it slows the game down. FSU's not scoring. You save Austin Appleby from getting killed and creating turnovers if you convert some third downs. I mean, a lot of this happened on the first down early in the play. It was going back to early in the game. You don't put him in those situations to where you're in passing situations, and the FSU defensive line is killing Austin Appleby. But the last tidbit I'll throw about the offense there was how bad they were on third down and how that basically affected the Gator defense from, you know, just having to be on the field and having to save this Gator offense time and time again. FSU with 387 total yards. I mean, you can't ask for more. This is an offense that puts up numbers. And for Florida to hold them 387, you know, once again, it's kind of the same story with these FSU, you know, Florida games. Florida's defense keeps them in it, you know, till fourth quarter, and then something happens to where you can't, you know, the offense can't score, and the defense eventually gives in. So FSU had a 387 to 205 yard advantage there. Francois, you know, 15 to 26, 138 yards, pedestrian numbers, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, made big plays with his feet, had 9 carries for 63 yards and a touchdown in the fourth quarter there to put the seal on the game. Dalvin Cook, 26 carries for 153 yards. Good numbers considering how he started in the game. And like as I mentioned, I think he got banged up. He hurt his wrist a little bit. And the Gator defense clamped down for as good as they could until they just eventually gave in, of course. And then Freddie Stevenson, of course, had that big carry, fullback carry that really surprised the Gator defense. And, you know, it was at that point, I'm sure they were worn out there. Travis Rudolph, FSU's leading receiver in the season and in the game, 4 receptions for 63 yards. And the big one, the big touchdown, the 46-yarder. Once Duke Dawson went down, and I tweeted it right then, and I knew it. I know how Jimbo Fisher is. Jimbo Fisher can exploit a defense with the best of them. And as soon as Duke Dawson went down, I just knew a big play was going to happen. Florida had to go base defense, had to keep Daniel McMillan on the field, had to go with 3 linebackers instead of putting another DB out there, maybe in a nickel situation. And it really changed things. And it started with that play with Travis Rudolph. But it was really Chauncey Gardner there who got caught in bad position, overran his coverage zone and left that open. But, you know, if Duke Dawson's in that role, maybe that doesn't happen. Maybe Florida calls a different defense because we saw later on in the game with Dawson in there and then having to play that base defense, or Dawson not in there, and then Florida having to play that base defense. FSU just exploited it time and time again. You know, it was – with all the injuries to Nick Washington and Marcus May already in the secondary, for Duke Dawson to go down really just hamstrung that defense there. So it's you know, Florida had a chance still. I mentioned that, you know, the first drive of the game, you know, they're trying to be aggressive. I think they knew they weren't going to have many chances in this game. So I don't necessarily really blame McElwain for going for it on fourth down, but you just really got to look at you get 3 there, and then you're not maybe forcing the situation so much later on in the game. You know, it's but you can't blame me for being aggressive. We clamor all the time for the staff to be more aggressive, and it was there, and it just didn't work out. Some more numbers for Marcel Harris, great game, 11 total tackles. All over the field. Colin Johnson, Chauncey Gardner was 6 apiece. Caleb Brantley just lived in the backfield, made some big plays, keeping Dalvin Cook, you know, behind the line of scrimmage and pressuring DeAndre Francois at times. David Reese, 5 tackles. He couldn't keep up his double-digit number of tackles that he's had the last couple of weeks. And a lot of other guys, you know, some less tackles. Quincy Wilson, Jabari Zuniga, Daniel McMillan, all but 3, and some more guys down there. So, of course, it stings, you know, losing to FSU 4 straight years, not beating them since 2012, not being able to score them years in a row. It gets old. We'll see. You know, McElwain was not happy with reporters after the game talking about how will his team be ready for Alabama. He's not necessarily a fan of people questioning his team's manhood there. Florida will be ready. Florida, will be outmatched. They'll be banged up. It may not look like they're ready just because it's going to be a complete mismatch, overmatch. But it's why they play the game. Maybe have a good showing. Show something there against Alabama. But we'll see how that goes. But losing the 4 straight to FSU is not good. Not good for recruiting. Not good for selling your program that it's close to what Florida State is building. Because right now, honestly, it's not. The other game might have been close, but you can see the playmakers all over the field for Florida State, and you don't see it for Florida, mainly at quarterback. Yes, DeAndre Francois didn't have a particularly great game, but he made the plays, and you can see it there. He's going to be a good quarterback for FSU. You see future with him. You don't see future with this Florida offense as it stands right now. The future of this Florida offense hinges, and I can't stress enough how much it hinges on Felipe Franks or Kyle Trask next year. You can't sell playing Luke Del Rio again, even though he'll be in the system. You can't sell that. Felipe Franks or Kyle Trask will be the quarterbacks next year to lead, hopefully, this Gator offense out of the hole that it's been in since 2009. And it's Jimbo Fisher has the upper hand right now. He can go sell recruits on, you can come to this state school and win. You go to Florida, you can win the East, but you're still not beating us. You can go to Miami, but you're still not beating us. This is 4 years in a row where Jimbo Fisher has beaten Florida and Miami. 4 years in a row. FSU has it rolling, and it's not going to stop anytime soon. They are the school the state recruits look to go to right now. So this was the chance for Florida to change that narrative. That's just why it's such a big game. You beat LSU, and you find a way to beat FSU, and you have plenty to point to recruits that your program is going in the right direction. What you sell now is playing time and the chance to turn it around, and the chance to be part of a team that can turn this Gator team around. But with that being said, the future doesn't look bright. It is on the offensive side of the ball until you see what these quarterbacks can do. The playmakers are there, I believe. I believe Jordan Scarlett and LaMichael P. Ryan are good key cogs at running back. Next year, you have Callaway's maybe final season if he leaves after a junior. Tyree Cleveland, Freddie Swain, Josh Hammond. You got good young talent at receiver. The offensive line is young. Yes, the last game against FSU was bad, but we saw signs before that they're taking the corner there. That they can be better. So there are inklings there on offense that we do see, and maybe they can build on it. But we know they've got to get that quarterback figured out, and it really stresses how big of a year it is for Jim McElwain next year to get this quarterback right. He has to have it right. All the questions that are arising about McElwain and the direction of this offense are legit. You can ask them. There's no harm in asking these questions if this offense is heading in the right direction. But it doesn't look like it is. And that's where the frustration comes from. It looks no better than what it was in the Will Muschamp. And this is a supposed offensive guru who was brought into Gainesville to fix this. And I'm not screaming for McElwain's head at all. Don't get it wrong. We've had this conversation after the Arkansas game. He has year 3 to change this. He has year 3 to put his quarterback in, whether it be Felipe Franks or Kyle Trask, and get something done. And it has to be. The defense, as good as these young guys look on defense, it's not going to be the stout defense that we've seen the last 2 years. It's not. It will be a good defense. It won't be a great defense. He's going to need at least a good offense to go along with a good defense. You get your good offense this year with this great defense, maybe bigger things happen, same as last year. But next year, you're fighting to prove you can change the narrative and have a good offense. With that defense, it may hold you back. You can still win the East again because the East is not going to be strong next year either. But you have to show some growth. You have to show some stability. You could argue you should see that in year 2, and I won't argue with you there. But he's putting the key pieces in at building everything around quarterback, and that's why next year is so important. Felipe Franks, Kyle Trask better be the guy for Jim McElwain. One of the two. We know Luke Del Rio is not getting it done. So go ahead. Yes, he'll be on the squad. Yes, he'll be on the roster. Yes, he may be in some kind of spring quarterback battle. But if Luke Del Rio is your quarterback next year, you can say Jim McElwain is not going to get it done. We've seen enough. It's not going to happen. So Felipe Franks, highly recruited quarterback. People will complain Florida hasn't recruited a highly recruited quarterback, and I think they forget that he was. So there you go. And we've heard good things from Kyle Trask. We saw how good he was in the spring game, how good he was in fall camp. Insiders I talked to say Felipe Franks has really grasped a hold of the offense in fall camp, really taken to the coaches and looks really good and probably would be ahead of Trask right now. But, that's in practice. That's against scout team. That's against second, third string defense, maybe in practice. We'll see what happens when they get on the field. But still have another game, still have Alabama. We'll talk about that. I'm just trying to get in there and talk about what I know you guys want to talk about, the future of this offense and what can be done, what should be done. But there's still a game against Alabama coming up. Florida, I think the line, our last line I saw, 20.5-point underdogs. Can't say I blame Vegas there. This game probably won't be pretty, folks. Maybe the defense comes up with a valiant effort and keeps it, close again, like the last 2 games against LSU and FSU, a close game at halftime, and take your chances. But these injuries are going to catch up eventually. Don't know the status of Duke Dawson. Jordan Sherritt went down, and he was on crutches after the game, so it doesn't look good there for him. So the flies just keep falling for Florida. And it was so weird. After the Georgia game, just a month ago, this team was about as healthy as you could wish, as bad as healthy as you could want a team to be in November. Go to Arkansas, and it just falls apart. It caves in, injury after injury, where you're losing 8, 9, 10 starters. That's half your starting lineup. Offense, defense, that's not even playing anymore. So it's a tough pill to swallow. Injuries are no excuse. They're a little bit of an excuse. You still got to find a way to go out and play these games, especially when you had your chances on offense. Plays were there, deep balls are there. Austin Appleby can't hit them. Your defense keeps you in the game once again. Defense has to get frustrated. I know it's a team game, but defense can only mentally, I think, take so much. We saw Florida try to get back in it. Chauncey Gardner with an interception. I'm just screaming for him to try and get in the end zone because I didn't think the offense could. So I was hoping to get a 7 there. And, of course, the Marcel Harris punt return fumble there. So Florida tried to find its way to stay in the game. Give them credit there. But we all know where the problems lie, and we all know this Gator team can't consistently win until they get something done on the offensive side of the ball. So this is Gators Breakdown, episode 24, recapping the Gators lost to FSU. 31-13. Just not a pretty showing. You got to turn this narrative around. You can't keep losing to Florida State. You think, eventually it has to end. Well, you have to remember Florida beat Tennessee 11 years in a row. So, now we kind of know how they feel, going through a little bit of that streak with 4 straight against FSU. It's where the Gators go from here. Another tough task against Alabama. Don't look for answers there. You're not going to find them. We're going to, look and see what this team does to prepare for a bowl game. They lose to Alabama. Sugar Bowl is probably out of the realm of possibility there. Florida might be ranked ahead of Auburn when the new polls come out, college football playoff polls come out. But once they lose to Bama next week, more than likely Auburn will stay ahead of Florida, and Tennessee will probably drop out of the rankings, losing to Vanderbilt. So it looks like Auburn will probably, maybe LSU will get that Sugar Bowl bid, coming up. So maybe Florida gets a favorable matchup in the bowl game. You'll have a month to prepare, roughly a month to prepare for a bowl game. Coaches will be out recruiting, of course. You'll have some visits coming in. A lot of things to look forward to. But what can Jim McElwain, Doug Nussmeier, and the offensive staff sell on recruits? Can they get some big playmakers there? It's a lot of people are clamoring for a better recruiting class, looking at it now and being pretty critical of it. But let it play out till February. We'll see what happens, goes from there, and maybe, just maybe, next year's better. I hate to be one of those types that look forward to next year, but you have to at this point. Yes, you have an SEC championship game, but chances of winning that are slim to none. You're not getting an offensive answer this year, so that's what you have to look forward to. Look forward to next year. But we'll still be rooting our Gators on when they take on Alabama and Atlanta. Cheer your orange and blue on as hard as you can. The players will feed off of it just a little bit. Show your support there. Don't be one of those type of fans that just give up on a team this late in the season when they're playing for something. While the chances are very low, anything can happen in that game. You still you cheer on your Gators. So this is Gators Breakdown, episode 24. As I mentioned, you can find us on iTunes, SoundCloud, TuneIn Radio, YouTube here as well, as we recapped the Florida fourth straight loss to FSU. Florida loses 31-13. So thanks for listening to the podcast, and we'll have our midweek podcast later in the week with me and Joey V, looking ahead to Alabama. And, we'll see where the Gators go from there. Thanks for joining me.